Claire Curran.
Mr. Chair. So, Mr. Chair, I want to speak to part 2 of the bill and in particular to the adjudication clauses. And before I start, I've got what I consider to be quite an important question for the Chair, the Minister, and sorry, not you, Mr. Chair, although you're welcome to have a go, but the Minister and the Chair, who I'm sure is not just a pretty face, and the officials are actually here, and this is a serious question, and I hope it can be answered quite easily.
I am going to interrupt the member now. I've reflected on the comment that she made. There's been a bit of a problem this afternoon with some comments, and I think the comment she just made about the Minister, I think she reflected on if the genders had been reversed and whether it would have been an appropriate comment. I think she would have taken offence. So I'm just going to ask the member to take care.
Oh, well, I'll apologise for that comment, Mr. Chair. What I would like to ask the Minister and the Chair, though, is, or to the officials, is with regards to the Minister's SOP. Now, the Minister's SOP went to 2 at the beginning of the explanatory note. The majority or the most substantial part of the SOP was around changes to the retentions part of the bill, but it also said that there were other minor and technical changes. And when you look at part 2, particularly with regards to the adjudication of disputes, which runs from the new 10A through to, I think, probably around 18 or perhaps even beyond that, pretty much up to part 4 of that part 2, is that there appears to be changes, but it's because we haven't had an opportunity to have a select committee briefing on this, that what I want to know is, are the changes in that part with regards to the adjudication provisions, are they just very minor, or do they go to any substantive changes? And the reason I'm asking is, as the officials will be aware, is that in the Select Committee there was a lot of discussion around this part of the bill, and there were a lot of submissions, and there was a lot of and we had some private submissions given, and there was a lot of discussion and changes that were made during that part of the bill, and I just want to draw the Minister's attention to the reason for this, and the problem that was being solved was that, and this goes to enforcement, is that under the existing provisions in the Act, enforcement of a determination about payment is time-consuming and costly, and so determinations about rights and obligations disputes have ended up not being able to be enforced and ending up being reheard in court. And the whole purpose of this part of the bill, and in fact, when you think about it, a lot of the reasoning behind making these changes to the Act in general have been about trying to tighten up the enforcement part and the adjudication and how that process works in practice. So what I'm concerned about is knowing and being reassured as a member of that Select Committee who took this seriously, is are there any changes in this part? Are they very minor and technical? Or are there any substantive changes? And if so, can the Minister tell us what they are? And so I'm hoping that after I've contributed made my contribution, that he at least will be able to give me possibly a yes/no answer. So just quickly to give the House an indication of the importance of this. This goes, and I think the Minister actually did, the previous Minister who was in the chair did actually address this in the last time we had the discussion at the committee stage on this, which I think was last night or the night before. It all seems a bit of a blur. We talked about ambush claims, and that one of the other problems we were trying to ensure we didn't create, so there weren't unintended consequences, was that there would be opportunities for ambush claims by people trying to abuse the process. And currently, claimants can see, and we talked about the way that adjudication works now. So currently the claimants can set adjudication in motion within 1 working day, and then the respondent is required to reply within 5. So residential owners and smaller contractors are particularly vulnerable to ambush, as they're not likely to be familiar with the provisions, Mr Chair.
Claire Curran.
Of the Act, and our recommendations were adding new clauses that changed the time frame from selecting an adjudicator to 2 to 5 working days after the notice of adjudication had been served, where both the parties cannot agree on the appointment. And that was described as being a pause in the process, and I do remember, even though it's several years ago, I do remember there being quite a lot of discussion around how that would work and whether that would work. And then it went through quite a significant, quite detailed process, which I acknowledge the work that the officials did on this, because it was quite a detailed process of how that would actually play out, and how the adjudicator would be appointed once they'd been appointed, what process would happen then about eligibility criteria and who was eligible and who wasn't eligible and what were the rules around that, the time frames for adjudication, and then the fairness. It's basically all the fairness provisions in this process, so that there could be extensions of time, and then around cost and the knowledge of the cost, and so that there wasn't going to be surprises in this process. So, and we talked quite a lot about pre-adjudication and whether there should be a pre-adjudication conference, and I remember there was again a big discussion about that. So I suppose, and I don't want to take up the time of the House tonight by going into great depth around this, but what I do want to know is, and I think where we felt comfortable with this part of the bill. We were not happy about the fact that retentions weren't in the bill, but what I do want to be reassured about is that any changes that have been made with the Minister's SOP to this part of the bill, are they minor and technical without any changing the intent of the Select Committee, or is there any greater impact that we should know about? And so that's what I'm asking the Minister for his advice to the House on tonight. Thank you.